Hello, everybody, and welcome back to BioSC 140 Human Physiology. This video is going to cover Laboratory 32, Control of Breathing. This is Lab 32 in the supplement, and there's going to be two parts. There's going to be ventilatory control and measure breath holding time under different conditions. So, in live class, we actually do this all as one big group. Most experiments, we break up into small groups or we do them individually. This one, we do all together. All right, so objectives. Examine the effects of altering the following on breath holding, volume of air in the lungs, and initial statuses of blood gases. So, we're going to find out what affects our ability to hold our breaths and why. We're going to determine whether a lack of oxygen or an increase in carbon dioxide is a stronger driver for breathing. Procedures. Safety first. I'm going to repeat that. Safety first. Now, this is a lab that you can do at home. Normally, we do it as, all at one group, but safety first, okay? Do not hold your breath for an unsafe amount of time, okay? This is not a competition. This is not a competition. Nobody should be passing out. All right, so we're going to be holding our breaths, or if we were in class, some of us would be holding our breaths. And we're going to hold our breath to the same level of discomfort each time. We're not holding our breaths as long as we possibly can. We are not holding our breaths as long as we possibly can. We are holding our breaths to a specific level of discomfort. Once we feel a little bit of discomfort, we're going to remember what that feels like, start breathing again, and do it again for the next cycle, the next condition. Does that make sense? Again, safety first. All right, so hypothesize. Determine breath holding time under 6 conditions. So how long can you hold your breath until you get to a little bit of discomfort in these 6 situations? Max inhale, so that's you breathe in all the way. So you normal breathing, breathe in all the way. Hold your breath. Compare that to just a normal breathing and then a normal inhale and then hold your breath. Compare that with a forced max exhale. So normal breathing and then breathe out all the way. And then hold your breath. Compare these 3. Hypothesize which one can you hold your breath the longest, which one can you hold your breath the least. Why? Why is that? Now let's look at D, E, and F. For D, we're going to hyperventilate. For D, we're going to take 4, maybe 3 to 5 deep, quick breaths, and then breathe in and hold our breath. Compare that to rebreathing. With rebreathing, we're going to take a plastic bag, put it just over our mouths, not over our nose and mouth, over just our mouths, and we're going to take 3 to 5 breaths in and out into the bag. Into the bag, so that we are re-inhaling, we are rebreathing some of the air that we exhale. And then we're going to exercise for 1 minute to 2 minutes, enough to, get your heart rate up a little bit, and then see how long we can hold our breaths. All right, so usually students have a pretty good idea of A, B, C, and D, and the effects of how much air you have in your lungs with how long you can hold your breath. So the effects of air volume is what we're seeing from A to C. I mean, that's the difference in these three different trials is how much air you have in your lungs when you start to hold your breath. So max inhalation 43 seconds, class average 58, usually around where people are. I'd actually say class average usually is a little bit lower than that, maybe more like 50 seconds. Normal inhale 36 for this specific student, class average 41. Um, Relative to A, that's exactly where it normally is. I'd say normally, actually, yeah, that's right in the ballpark of normal. For what I've gotten in class in the past, maybe 36 is actually more average for what I remember, what I've seen in classes before. And forced exhalation, I mean, there are some students who start breathing, 15 seconds, 13 seconds after they max exhale. So relative wise, those are actually, yeah, those are pretty average numbers. Um, and most students, that's kind of what they expected, at least maybe not the absolute time, but the relative times. That's what most students kind of expect with this lab. And why is that? Why is that? Lung volume changes blood gases. So with a max inhale, we increase hold time. Why is that? Well, two things change when we increase the amount of volume before we start to hold our breaths. We have more oxygen in our lungs waiting to be absorbed into our body. So you take a deep breath, there's oxygen in that air in your lungs just waiting to be absorbed. If you exhale, there's less oxygen in your lungs waiting to be absorbed into your body. And vice versa with carbon dioxide. If you're taking a deep breath, you're taking in a bunch of fresh air that's low in carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide can disperse from your bloodstream into the air in your lungs. If you exhale, there's not a lot of air in your lungs, and that CO2 concentration goes up really high, really fast. So, what's a stronger driver for breathing, O2 or CO2? Well, we can't really tell from this experiment so far. We can't really tell from this experiment so far. Here is a practice test question. A, B, C, or D. Under which one of these conditions can the average student hold their breath the longest? Why? All right, let's move on. So now let's look at D, E, and F. So deep breaths, hold your breath. Rebreathe, so breathe in and out, you know, into a bag. So exhale into a bag and then breathe that air back in 3 to 5 times. And then exercise. So let's look at what is going on here. Remember, we want to find out what is the biggest, what we're holding our breaths until we get to a level of discomfort. What causes that level of discomfort? What causes that desire to breathe? Is it lack of O2 or is it increased CO2? Well, we need to make some assumptions. Starting lung volume is constant, blood gases, O2 usage and CO2 production, and pH change. So, with deep breaths, with deep breaths, what we're assuming is that our arterial CO2, the amount of CO2 in our arteries, goes down. The more we exhale, the more we deep breath, the more we hyperventilate, we're decreasing the amount of CO2 in our bloodstream. With hyperventilation, our O2 levels are going to stay the same. Our O2 levels are going to stay the same. Now, why is that? Well, it's because oxygen saturation. When we talk about oxygen saturation in lecture, And most people under normal conditions, their oxygen saturation is 99% plus. It's not like you can get above 100%, we're right there already. But CO2 we can drop, okay? So with the deep breaths, we're decreasing CO2 levels, keeping O2 levels the same. With deep breaths, class average 72. That's really high. That's really good. And E for rebreathing, we're assuming that O2 stays at 99, 100%, but CO2 increases. Remember, we're breathing back in air we just exhaled, so we're breathing in CO2 rich air. So CO2 levels in our bloodstream increase. Look at rebreathing numbers, about 22. So that decreases our holding time. And then we do exercise. What changes with exercise? Well, what changes with exercise is O2 consumption and CO2 production. Exercising is going to increase O2 consumption, O2 use, because we're making more energy, and it's going to increase CO2 production. Remember, you consume O2 to create energy, you produce CO2 to create energy. And CO2 affects pH because it's acidic. So exercise, really low. Ability to hold your breath after exercising, really, really low. So exercise actually doesn't tell us too much about this. Is CO2 or O2 the driver? Because O2's consumption's up and production's down. But if you look at D and E, it can elucidate, it can give us some information about what the strongest driver of our desire to breathe is. What makes us think like, oh, I need to breathe. So O2 levels are the same in each of these situations. With deep breaths, CO2 levels are decreased. With rebreathing, CO2 levels are increased. When CO2 levels are decreased, holding time is high. When CO2 levels are increased, holding time is low. So we can conclude that CO2 is a stronger driver of breathing than O2. Changes in pCO2 affect holding time. So increase CO2, decrease holding time. Increase CO2 levels, decrease holding time. More CO2, more desire to breathe. All right, everybody. If you have any questions, please let me know. I am here to help, and I will see you in the next video.